It is March 23, 2023, and it is indeed an awesome thing when we're able to look into these various interesting articles. Our weekly cyber review of all of those articles and white papers that speak to a number of interesting subject matters that affect us as cybersecurity professionals, things that we definitely want to take into consideration as we try to become better cybersecurity expert to be able to garner those insights to help various organizations to improve and to better their capabilities as it relates to defending and protecting the organizations in light of the various cybersecurity threats. But in particular, we'll be focusing our attention on a very interesting article published in the Forbes um, articles written by Stuart A. Levine. And to discuss this subject with us, we have Chris Carter, our regular cybersecurity risk expert in that space. So, Chris, thanks for joining us on the CyberJA Weekly Review.
Always a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, definitely look into it as well. And as you all seen on screen, guys, then we'll be looking at cybersecurity is no longer an issue reserved strictly for CIOs and CISOs. And this typically, based on what is being presented, is the normal situation in many organizations when it comes on to cybersecurity. Then this is something that is pushed towards the IT persons or the cybersecurity persons within the organization. The responsibility is on these individuals in terms of dealing with all that is associated with cybersecurity on a whole. But no, we're recognizing that this to me seems that there is a paradigm shift in light of what is happening in terms of the various regulations that are being imposed on organizations. Then um, it seems now that the the leaders within these organizations, in this case the CEO, then have to take a different approach, not just to focus on leading an organization in terms of meeting its objectives financially, which is one of the ultimate drives, but no, this individual now has to put yourself to equip themselves with the necessary skills in light of cybersecurity awareness so that they are able to take on this additional responsibility. And if we look at the article, it says that CEOs on their boards must now hone cybersecurity, right? And this says a lot. And we'll be looking at dissecting this article in terms of all the various points that are presented. And it goes on to say CEOs need to establish the right culture to protect against cyber risk. Boards need to establish cyber as a material business financial risk and need to better understand the potential of its material impact on business. Now, just in the very first paragraph, there is so much for us to actually dive into as it relates to this article itself. So, Chris, can you give us like a short overview of this article itself, and then we can then further break it apart in terms of the points that are presented.
Yeah. Again, it's great to be here. This is like you said, it's a far the this article and the proposal by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, which is a United States governing body that's responsible for two things. One is they regulate the security markets and they protect investors. So when they come out with a proposed rule to say that the board has to have a uh, much more, uh, much more, I would say, teeth when it comes to cybersecurity. the implications are far-reaching. Why? Because as we've, it's become almost cliche, right? That cybersecurity, with the move of digital transformation post-COVID, organizations moving to the cloud, things like that. Cybersecurity plays a key part in what I would love to call the four R's, which is, a company's revenue, right? The regulations to which they're beholden, the fact that they can come back and be resilient after a breach, and fourth, and which is probably just as critical as the prior three, would be their reputation, right? So you look at all those four things; those are all areas that will impact a company's bottom line, and cybersecurity is a part of all those areas. Either one of those areas are negatively impacted, that could have uh, a very negative impact on the business in terms of their stock holdings, in terms of their market holdings, their stock price, as well as their reputation in the market. So, I think what this article is saying is that CEOs and the boards must now have a more influential role in how cybersecurity plays a part in driving business outcomes. And that means, and we'll talk more about this, but that means there needs to be a marrying of cybersecurity skills as well as overall knowledge of the business, whether it's finance, marketing, legal, HR, you name it. Cybersecurity is embedded in all those areas of the business, and therefore CISOs will and must have a good understanding of those areas and how she or he plays a part in terms of securing the business.
Yes, definitely, very important. But one of the things is though is that for many, I think one of the underlying factors here is actually creating that culture within the organization. I mean, when you have, for example, boards, bearing in mind that the CEO report to the board of management on all of these individuals as it relates to governance structure, if the CEO is actually driving this initiative and the CEO is not actually getting the support from the board members, then for sure we are definitely seeing where we're going to be having a number of challenges in this regard. So this is something that I believe, as it relates to CEOs and their boards, must know own cybersecurity. It boils to the fact that these individuals ought to now become educated on this issue of cybersecurity as a whole. So the thing that actually pops up in the mind, how it is that we actually get the board and the CEO to actually start thinking cybersecurity, to start understanding cybersecurity, because before you can actually create that culture, then they ought to have that understanding and that appreciation of what cybersecurity is and what cybersecurity is trying to achieve on behalf of the organization, the business. So can you share some light in terms of how do we bridge that gap, that disparity, if they are going to be creating that culture?
Well, I think the CEO is accountable for it. I think the CISO is going to be responsible. And yeah, to a certain extent, the CEO is going to drive those initiatives. But a CEO generally is concerned with the bottom line, what he or she can do to ensure that revenue streams are being are protected, to ensure that the bottom line remains robust, shareholders are happy, and the board, right, uh, are also happy. So I think the in my opinion, I think CISOs are going to have to step up their game, meaning they need to have a better understanding of the business and how what they do impact the business. If that means a crash course or meeting with heads of businesses to understand how what they do impact a business unit, I think that's what's needed, because the CEO is not going to The CEO is much too busy to be taking crash courses on the fundamentals of cybersecurity. Her responsibility is primarily around right driving business growth, expanding markets, and keeping the shareholders happy. Um, so I think that's the challenge. And in order to bridge that gap, uh, what we're going to see, I think, at the board level, we're going to have qualified technical experts who can speak to the cybersecurity aspects of a particular business or a particular vertical. But that person should also have an understanding of what's happening within the business, market dynamics, what's happening from a political perspective, environmental, social, technological, right, and being able to wrap all of that around a cybersecurity strategy, and being able to take themselves out of that and have a broad view and being able to have a conversation with the CISO and the CEO.
Sure,
So
exactly.
that's my opinion. I'm not sure if that makes if that answered your question, but from my perspective, I think that's really what's going to be needed to bridge this gap.
Yes, and I mean one of the purposes is actually endorsing that fact that all of this starts from the top down, regardless of the nature of the organization. Then it's a matter of working with each other. I mean, from the various verticals or within the organization, the persons try to understand each other to build those relationships in terms of that governance structure and that governance approach for this to actually take effect within an organization. It goes on to say that new cyber reporting will require deeper focus on material business, operational, and financial impact. Cybercrime damages are expected to reach 8 trillion within this year based on the article. As a result, boards will need to um, substantively address cyber investments and the risk of business interruptions, remediation costs, lost revenue, litigation, erosion of competitiveness, and long-term shareholder value. So the reporting aspect of cybersecurity now has to be taken into consideration. So definitely, the organizations will have to have these individuals who are definitely on point in terms of communicating in a way to the executive so that they can really understand and interpret what's happening from a technical perspectives in light of what the business needs to achieve from an objective perspective. And it goes on to say that cyber risk reporting and business resilience planning must now become a key component of effective board governance. So it's a very important point, cyber risk reporting and business resilience planning. So can you share some lights on this?
No, and that's exactly what I talked about a few minutes ago, and I said, the board are responsible for protecting those four R's. Again, it's showing up here. You talk about revenue, right? And you could say the cost associated with the revenue. You talk about resilience, the graph you read, the reputation, right? And then the regulation. That's really it. The board really can't make any decisions without having information. If they make decisions with incorrect information or partial information or no information, it's going to have some impact, which will probably be negative. So I think again, the CEO, right, at the organizational level, the CEO must empower his or her CISO to have a seat at the table, being a part of those strategic conversations in terms of your overhead expenditures from a cyber perspective, but also investment going into the next 3 to 5 years. What are some investments that we need to have? What are some technologies or capabilities we need to invest in in order to ensure that we not only stay competitive from the business perspective, but from the cyber perspective, we are resilient, right? And again, I remember sitting in a meeting with a CISO, a newly minted CISO, and he said, when people think of the business, I want them to see cyber. I want them to think cyber. And I'm saying to myself, when people think of the business, they should think of your services, not cyber. Cyber is important, but it's not that important, right? Cyber is there to enable the business so that the business can make money, so that the business can run securely and not have to worry about operational things that could be negatively impacted by a cyber incident, right? Whether it's it's a breach or whatever it is, you cannot have cyber being an obstacle when it comes to making money. So again, to summarize, protecting the 4R, that's the responsibility of the board. However, the CEO must empower the CISO so that they can work as a team to provide the board with information so the board can make decisions that are relevant to the operation of the business so that the business can have a strong bottom line and make their shareholders happy. If that's not happening, um, that's a recipe for other than success,
Eh,
assured success.
Yeah, exactly. And in addition to all that you have said, they have actually pointed out a number of ways that um, elements that the boards can actually take into consideration that can help to effectively expand the board's cybersecurity expertise. And there are a number of suggestions in terms of gaining various expert advice to assist in that process. And they are recommending finding experts to support your board in exercising cyber risk oversight responsibilities, right? For example, making sure that your board is preparing to ask proper questions of management in terms of business strategy, financial planning, and capital allocations in the cyber era. And that's also very important, being able to ask those questions of your team, of your professional, because for one, if the executive or the CEO or the board of management is going to have those meaningful conversations, then they definitely need to know what questions to ask in light of where they're going as an organization. So they're saying that make sure that your board is preparing to ask proper questions of management, and review materials and presentations provided to the board to ensure the right documents are in place, ensuring that safety in technology becomes a key driver in addition to cost, capability, performance, and speed to the market. So, based on your experience, though, as it relates to this, is this something that is new in totality, or is it something that, I mean, the board in today's environment knew that this was actually coming, and as a result, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the the phenomenon of cybersecurity is in some ways it's new, but in terms of the board's remit, in terms of having fiduciary responsibility for the organization, is not new, right? And the board will continue to ask questions. However, those questions are going to be driven by the relationship that the board has with its one employee, which is the CEO. It's going to be dependent on the type of information that the CEO provides to the board. It's going to be dependent on the relationship between the CISO and the CEO or whatever that reporting channel is. The language has to be very consistent because if the CISO says X and he means A, and the CEO says B, and he means X, that's going to cause a lot of dissonance at the board level, which means it's not going to be a very good day for the CEO or the CISO. And as they say, the proverbial crap falls downhill. If the board is confused or the board cannot make a decision because the information that the board is getting is at best nebulous or incomplete or incorrect or non existent, the board is hamstrung by the ineptness of the leadership, which means the board is now in a position, is forced into a position of replacing the leadership, which could also mean the CISO and the CIO, uh, along with the CEO. So that that connective tissue between the CEO and her team needs to be really intact. I've heard of companies that have the CEO have each individual who will present to the board or the audit committee or whatever committee. They write a script. They have the script on screen and they read the script to the board or to the committee. The reason for that is the CEO maybe have gone a little bit too far, but uh, that's to mitigate against the risk of miscommunicating to the board because that has consequences that could impact people's lives, could impact the market, could impact the organization's stock price and market, you know, your position in the market. So all critical, and I think if any one of those essential elements are lacking, missing, or irrelevant, it's going to have far-reaching consequences.
Exactly. Which definitely means that there has to be a comprehensive restructuring within the organization. Because when you look at it, cybersecurity is no longer an issue reserved strictly for CIOs and CISOs. And in many instances, I believe this is, and we have seen it happening in various cases, especially when there are legal issues involving breaches and all of these things. That is almost like a hands-off situation. Once these things happen at times, well, and it boils back down to the communication that exists between the type of CEOs and CISOs that exists within these organizations in terms of being able to identify all the necessary risk, ensuring that they have the necessary sign off in terms of risks that are identified that management need to be aware of so that when these things do happen. So it boils back down to having that strong alignment where the CISOs, the CIOs, the executive, they have that relationship whereby they are able to communicate and to understand each other. But one other thing that actually comes from this is the fact that if it is no longer an issue reserved strictly for CIs, does it mean that CISOs or CIOs can now lapse or relax in terms of their level of effectiveness in carrying out their duties? In that, okay, it's no longer so much on us, but it's more CEO on board.
Yeah, so I think I would say, so in response to it's no longer an issue that's relegated to the CISO or belongs to the CISO. I would edit it and say it was never an issue that was for the CISO, just the CISO. It has always been a business priority. It has always been a business function. I think a lot of times as technology folks, we tend to get inebriated with our positions or the knowledge we have about technical things, and that we live in an ivory tower. And I think that ivory tower is crumbling with, you know, with the transition to cloud, with digital transformation. The tower continues to crumble because now I think cybersecurity is at a point where it's being democratized. And by that I mean every person within the organization is responsible for cybersecurity because it is embedded in the DNA of your operation. It's kind of like, I don't know, water. Um, Water is everywhere. I think cybersecurity is ubiquitous. And because of that, that ivory tower that we have built will eventually come crashing down. Cybersecurity will become a part of the DNA of the fabric of who we are as business folks, and it will just become a muscle memory, a thing that just like maybe finance. If you go on a trip, you know that you have a per diem, right? That's a policy. That's a financial policy. You know what your salary is going to be. You know what you are reimbursed for. It's just a part of the way you do business. CFOs never lock themselves in an ivory tower and say, well, you know, this is how we're going to do things. No, it's always been a part of the business. I think because the cybersecurity industry is so young and we are immature, understand what the business is perspective, we're growing and we're getting. But I think cybersecurity has a long and far way to go to catch up to the business and to just remove the the arrogance of, you know, well, it's cyber and cyber. No, you're just another function of the business that is responsible for driving good numbers at the bottom line, as well as the top line in some cases.
Sure, definitely. And I think a very important note to end on as we reinforce the point as it comes across to the fact that um, within the cybersecurity space, as cybersecurity leaders, then we recognize that this new set of cybersecurity professionals, the board of management, it's a new retooling. I mean, for sure, there's going to be a lot of challenges as it relates to getting that alignment, but there has to be a starting point. And I guess the best way to start is for us who are educated within that realm to help those to work alongside along the verticals to ensure that we are all on the same playing field. And based on the article, it says unfortunately, 90% of boards today are not ready for the new SCE's cybersecurity regulations. And you have similar regulations in various contexts in other parts of the world. They have their own regulations that are being enforced on these many organizations. And we hear from time to time the various pushbacks and challenges that exist um, within these various areas. Most boards are unprepared to fully meet the, as was mentioned earlier, cyber risk disclosure requirements, and many still lack the ability to contextualize cyber threats to business, operational, and financial exposures, including the erosion of shareholder value. So it still boils back down to that alignment of communication, communication. If not only communication, but that effective communication, that is what makes a difference, that drives the organization. And when you really think about it from a cybersecurity perspective, everything that has to do with the initiatives that cybersecurity professionals want to implement within an organization boils back down to your ability to articulate, to communicate, to bring across, to simplify in a way that everyone understands, regardless of your background in the industry, regardless of your role in the organization. Then we all should be at a place whereby we are able to address the concerns, the business objectives within an organization, and then are able to come together to support the necessary initiatives, the processes in the organizations to ensure that the necessary objectives are met accordingly. And it goes on to say that getting a team in place to create the requisite culture of responsible stewardship combined with inboard support, board oversight, reinforcement, independent strategic cyber governance analysis, and timely regulatory guidance will help to protect an organization against major financial and operational disruptions. And for many businesses, there is a silo. There's so much silo, there's so much divisions that exist among departments as it relates to companies. I mean, it's almost like a case whereby everyone is there, managers, various executives are in the organization. Everyone knows that they have their duties to perform, but not seeing the overall picture of the purpose of the organization, then that is where we definitely have to focus on having that good governance structure, that good governance framework in place to ensure that these initiatives comes to reality. And as was mentioned, as a topic says, cybersecurity is no longer an issue reserved strictly for CIOs and CISOs. Then a framework has to be in place to help to drive this sort of a new paradigm initiative in many of these organizations, especially in smaller businesses where this might not be so much of a important um, point, but for sure, then we as the professionals definitely need to work along to ensure that we are supporting the business and we are able to communicate effectively and to help um, other persons that might not have that cybersecurity expertise or the vocabulary so that they better understand and to be on board as it relates to taking responsibility for the decisions surrounding risk and the protection and performance of the organization on a whole. So, what are your final thoughts on this issue?
No, I think I don't have any final thought. Like you said, I think communication or effective communication is critical. Cybersecurity has always been an issue that is for the business, not for CIOs and CISOs. And I think once, as technologists or security professionals, whatever you want to title you want to assign to ourselves, we need to really embed that in our thinking and how we communicate and collaborate with the business and in some cases the board. Once that sort of barrier is removed, I think we'll see a definite change. And the SEC recommendation will not be difficult or should not be difficult uh, as it seems to be. But we'll get there. I'm positive. I'm hopeful, and let's see how it all plays out.
Sure, it was a pleasure having you joining us today again, Chris. Your points are always um, valid, appreciated. And guys, stay tuned for our future conversations on our weekly cybersecurity and GRC review.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Pleasure being here with you.